Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Shirinui deck profile. So this is a very interesting zombie deck that focuses around the synchro aspect that zombies do so well, which is a really interesting concept, and I personally love, because synchro summoning is actually my favorite mechanic in the entire game. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, because we have all those awesome rewards you guys, like getting your name shirts for every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Shirinui Squire. So Shirinui Squire is a really good card in this deck and a really good overall zombie monster, because it has the ability that when this card is normal summon, you can special summon a Shiranui Spectral Sword monster from your hand or deck. And also you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except for zombie monsters. And if this card is banished, you get to draw a card and then discard a card, which for zombies, sending cards from your hand is really good. We then play 2 copies of Shirinui Spirit Master. So Shirinui Spirit Master is a really good card as well, because when this card is normal summoned, you get to special summon 1 Shirinui monster from your hand or graveyard, except another copy of itself, but banish it when it leaves the field. And if this card is banished, you get to target a card in your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a pretty good effect, because there's some of your cards that just to synchro summon you have to banish in this deck, so triggering the effect to be able to pop a card on the synchro summon of a monster is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Shiranui Samurai. So Shiranui Samurai has a really neat effect, but I just feel like this card is a one of in this deck because it has the ability to quick effect banish a zombie monster from the graveyard, which triggers a lot of the effects in the graveyard of your Shiranui monsters to banish them. And then this card gains 600 attack. And if this card does, banish any monsters that battles this card, which is the really good effect about this monster. It also has the ability that these effects last until the end of this turn. And if this card is banished, you get to target Shiranui monster in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is really good to be able to add back like a copy of Squire back to your hand or a copy of your Spirit Master back to your hand to then normal summon them again to get their effects. We then play 3 copies of Shiranui Solitaire. Solitaire is probably the best normal summon in the entire deck, because it's going to get your copy of Unizombie out to your side of the field as quickly as possible to then use its effect to be able to send monsters from deck to graveyard. We then play a single copy of Shiranui Spectral Sword Shade. Spectral Sword Shade is a one-of because this card, you can tribute it and then target 2 your banished zombie monsters, and including a Shiranui monster, and special summon them in defense position, but negate their effects. And also you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except for zombie monsters, which is not that big of a deal because the majority of the stuff you're summoning anyways is zombies. So this card's a good one-of in the deck. I might consider playing it at 2 in the future, but for now, I just like it as a one-of. We then play 2 copies of Spectral Sword. Spectral Sword, to me, I love it as a 2-of. This card is probably the reason I actually picked this deck up. Actually, it is the reason I picked this deck up to begin with, because this card is insanely good. Because if this card's in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent to the graveyard, you get to target 1 non-tuner zombie monster in your graveyard, banish both this and that card, and if you do, special summon 1 zombie monster that's a synchro monster from your extra deck, whose total level equals the 2 monsters that were banished. So for example, if you banish a copy of this and a copy of, say, the Shiranui Solitaire from your graveyard, then you get to special summon a level 6 zombie monster from your extra deck, which is the really good effect. And then if you banish Solitaire, it has the added ability that you get to target up to 2, you get to target 1 of your banished zombie or Shiranui monsters, except another copy of itself, and special summon it to your side of the field. So if you have another zombie monster banished, you just instantly get it back to your field, like your Squire or something else like that. So it's very combo based in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Unizombie in the deck. Unizombie is a really powerful zombie monster. It's probably one of the better normal summons, but you're trying to get to it as quickly as possible, which is why you play 3 copies of Solitaire, because it has the ability that you can send a zombie monster either from your hand or your deck. You can activate both the effects per turn. You can send both from the hand and the deck to the graveyard to increase the level of 1 monster on the field, which is really good. To be able to just increase its own level to a level 4 monster is a really good effect to be able to get all sorts of synchro monsters out of the extra deck. We then play 2 copies of Mizuki. Mizuki can banish itself from the graveyard to special summon a zombie from the graveyard. 1 copy of Gozuki. It's essentially Walking Foolish Burial, which is a really good effect. That's a once per turn effect. So if your opponent doesn't handle this card, it's really good to just leave it on the field. 1 copy of Vampire Fraulein. Vampire Fraulein, when this card is in your hand and a monster is attacked, that's a zombie monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then it has the added effect to be able to pay life points in increments of 100, and then a zombie monster gains all the way up to 3,000 attack points, which is really good. One copy of Jacobolin. Jacobolin is really good at discarding a card from your hand. It's a zombie monster to special summon this card from your hand, and then during your opponent's main phase, you can quick effect target a zombie monster in either player's graveyard and special summon that monster, but banish it when it leaves the field, and then banish this face-up card until the end phase, which is a really good effect just to be able to let it run away and come back and constantly revive cards from the graveyard. We then play 2 copies of Doom King Baller Trot. Doom King is really powerful in this deck and really helps the deck out a lot. To be able to get your copy of Doom King with Zombie World to change all of the monsters in the entire deck, in the field and the graveyards, into zombie monsters. This card's really powerful in this deck. We play a single copy of the Necro World Banshee. Banshee is really good at getting your copy of a Zombie World on your side of the field, because it essentially makes this card searchable, because you can normal summon Gozuki or Unizombie, send your copy of Banshee to the graveyard, banish it, and then immediately activate your copy of Zombie World from the deck, which is a really powerful effect just to get you your field spell on the field. 2 copies of Glow Up Bloom. Glow Up Bloom is essentially here to banish from the graveyard to get your copy of Doom King on your side of the field as quickly as possible with your copy of Zombie World on your side of the field. If you don't have Zombie World, you're probably going to search your copy of Jacobolin or Vampire Frolin, but you're usually going to have Zombie World on the field. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom to round out the monsters. Ash Blossom is just here to deal with your opponent's stuff so they don't have any sort of responses to your stuff, so you can activate the copy of Ash Blossom to stop your opponent from basically touching their deck at all. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Zombie World. So Zombie World is an extremely powerful field spell, probably one of the most powerful field spells in the entire game, that makes all monsters on the field and in the graveyard become zombie monsters. And neither player can tribute summon monsters except for zombie monsters, which is a really good effect just to be able to stop your opponent from doing all sorts of stuff against you, like tribute summoning. Like, for example, if you're playing against Monarchs, the Monarchs will have a really tough time against you, because if you play this card in the deck, it's going to basically stop them from tribute summoning. So any deck that does tribute summon against you is going to have a very tough time because of this card. We then play a single copy of Monster Reborn, which we play multiple Monster Reborns in the deck because you play the copies of Mizuki as well. So this card is a really powerful card that's going to basically get you out a bunch of cards out of your graveyard, and zombies love to be revived, so this card works well with the deck. We then play a single copy of Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is really good in the deck too, because your zombies love to be sent to the graveyard, so sending your zombies to the graveyard with this effect is just really powerful, especially like your Spectral Sword is just going to benefit really well off this card. We then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization, since you're playing zombies, you got to play Super Polymerization. This card is really good in the deck because you can fusion summon into your copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon or your copy of the Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon. That is a really powerful card and a really awesome out to a lot of monsters, especially when you have Zombie World on the field. This is essentially a 2-card out to any 2 monsters on the field at any given time, because you can use this card to discard a card from your hand, which is going to be extremely powerful against your opponent, and then you're going to use those 2 monsters your opponent controls to essentially get rid of everything that they have. So for example, if your opponent has a Dragoons and a copy of Anaconda against you, then you can immediately have, and you have Zombie World on the field, you can just activate this copy of Super Polymerization, get rid of the 2 monsters that they have on their side of the field, and go directly into Dragon Necro Nether Soul and deal with anything that they put on the board. We then play 2 copies of Ghost Meets Girl, a Shirinui Story, which is the last 2 spells of the main deck that if your opponent controls a monster, you can discard a monster from your hand that's a zombie, special summon a Shirinui monster with a different name from your deck or graveyard, and also you can special summon monsters except for zombies for the rest of the turn, which is basically just helps you get another zombie on your side of the field that's a Shirinui. So that's it for the monsters, guys, or the spells. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Shirinui style Swallow Slash. So Swallow Slash lets you tribute a zombie monster to target 2 cards on the field and destroy them, which is a really good effect just to be able to pop 2 additional cards on the field, which is a really nice effect because it can help you out cards like Mystic Mine, your opponent, to just disrupt your opponent like a copy of Icarus attack back in the day when you played him like Black Wings or Raid Raptor. So it's a really good effect that it doesn't just stop there, because it has an ability to banish one Shirinui monster from your deck as well, which then can trigger the effects of, say, your Samurai, your Squire, or your Spirit Master to get you a third pop on your side of the field if you banish Spirit Master, which is a really neat effect. We then play 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords, which out of all the zombie decks that play Zombie World, with the amount of zombie synchro monsters you play in the extra deck, this deck probably runs this card the best for style points, like for the way that the cards look, being like samurais, which is really cool, and for being able to use this card in versatility. Because if you flip this card, the only card that this turns off in the entire deck is actually the Dragon, or the Dragon Necro Nether Soul, and the Starving Venom with Super Polymerization, because you can't go into it. But there's so many zombie monsters in the extra deck that this card would just, it would be crazy not to run this card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Shiranui Shogun Saiga. Shogun Saiga is pretty good because what this card does is basically becomes a really big beat stick. Because if this card is special summon, you get to banish any zombie monster from your graveyard, and then this card gains attack equal to the banished monster's original attack until the end of the turn. And if this card on the field is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, then you get to target one banished zombie monster with 0 defense and return it to the graveyard, and you can only special summon this card once per turn, but it's a really powerful OTK piece for the deck. We then play a single copy of Shiranui Sun Saiga. Sun Saiga is pretty good because what it does is, if this card is special summon, you can return any number of your zombie type synchro monsters that are banished or to the graveyard, or in the graveyard, to your extra deck, which is a really good effect just to be able to get them back in the extra deck so you can keep using them over and over again. Then you can destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards returned as well. And if a zombie monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can banish a zombie or Shiranui monster from your graveyard instead, which is a really good effect just to be able to protect your monsters, and it's a 3,500 beat stick. We then play 2 copies of Shirinui's Squire Saga. Squire Saga is pretty good too because this card has 3 effects, which is kind of neat. That you can special summon this card once per turn, and then once per turn, you can banish one face-up monster you control or in your graveyard and apply these effects depending on what type of monster it was. If it was a zombie monster, you can make all monsters your opponent you control gain 300 attack, which is not that great of effect. If it's a fire monster, which all of your Shiranui monsters are, you get to target one spell or trap on the field and destroy it. Or if it's a synchro monster, you get to destroy one monster on the field, which you can activate all 3 of the effects if you want to, but you have to be able to banish a synchro zombie Shiranui monster. We then play 2 copies of Shiranui Samurai Saga. Samurai Saga is pretty good too because it lets you once per turn, during either player's turn, you can target one of your banished zombie monsters and shuffle it in the deck. And if you change to defense position, all monsters your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to that monster's original attack. And if this card is banished, you get to target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and it loses 500 attack, which is pretty good to be able to just shift all the monsters into defense position. We then play a single copy of Cyframe Lord Omega because it is a zombie deck, and 1 copy of Red Eyes Necro Dragon. This card is really good because Red Eyes Zombie Dragon is just really good in this deck because it can be a really, really big beat stick because it gains 100 attack for each zombie monster in either player's graveyard and on the field, which if you have Zombie World on the field, everything's a zombie on the field and in the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon. This card is really good too because basically what this card does is it generates tokens. When it battles an opponent's monster, it makes a token with the same attack and same defense as the monster that it was battling, but it doesn't destroy the opponent's monster battle. So basically passes through them like a ghost, and then you get the copy of the card on your side of the field as a token, which is kind of cool. We then play a single copy of Starving Venom. Starving Venom basically attacks your opponent. Basically, he's a big beat stick and a big super poly target. 1 copy of Boral Sword. Boral Sword is just a really good OTK piece for the deck. Shiranui Skill Saga Supremacy. This card is really good because Skill Saga basically comes out to your side of the field, and synchro monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. Synchro monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, and fire monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. And then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one of your banded zombie synchro monsters and special summon it to a zone this card points to, which you're only ever going to have one zone that this card points to anyways. We then play a single copy of Vampire Sucker because sometimes you need the suck, and 1 copy of Crystron Needle Fiber because Crystron Needle Fiber special summons tuners from the deck. So That's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really insane zombie deck that I hope you guys really enjoy. If it plays zombies, I'm all over it because zombies are actually like my favorite typing in the entire game, which is really a cool typing in the entire game because there's so many different ways that you can like change the deck and make it your own, which is why I love playing around with zombies. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.